Hi, I want to thank you for being here today. My name is Lori Dennison, and if I had to describe myself in 3 words, I would say that I'm a creative person. I would also describe myself as a free thinker, and in this day and age, it's getting harder and harder to be either one or the other, let alone both. But I happen to be one of those stubborn, bullheaded people who can only be who I am. And Bullhead, How We Escaped California and Found Our American Dream, is my chronicle of my personal journey. That being said, I believe that we as human beings have a lot more in common than not, and there is still so much that we can learn from one another. And it is my fondest wish that you be touched, moved, and inspired by what I have to share with you today. In the early 1980s, while still a teenager, I read the biography of Jim Morrison, No One Here Gets Out Alive, and I made a vow right then and there that I would lead an exciting life so that I would have a lot to write about. Be careful what you wish for. Even back then, I wanted to write the great American novel, but I could never come up with a beginning, a middle, or an end. So I focused on writing songs, short pieces, about feelings, impressions, and ideas. And later on, I would branch out into writing essays. I had my blog, and just about every evening after work, I would sit down at my computer and write. And I'd be writing my essay about whatever, this or that, or my thoughts on the scandal of the day. And while sitting there, I never quite knew how I would finish it up. But sure enough, something would always pop into my head to tie everything up with a neat little twist. And this was because I was exercising discipline at my craft. I was developing that muscle. Now, it sounds like a Nike ad, God forbid, but the secret to anything is to just do it. And eventually, when I set out to finally write my book, because I saw that I actually did have a beginning, a middle, and an end, I approached writing the book as writing a series of essays. At some point in the 1990s, I read the book Quantum Healing by Deepak Chopra. Chopra postulated that people get old because that's what they expect. People get sick because that's what they expect. And it's become even more evident today with a phenomenon of mass formation psychosis, how our mind can play tricks on us. By middle age, most people have succeeded in completely boxing themselves in, reconciled to their belief, their overriding expectation that this, the contents, footprints, and dimensions of their personal box, is all that's left for them in life. So it's what we think about and the way we think about the things that we think about that color our view of the world and informs our decisions. And so step by step by step and piece by piece by piece, this is how our thoughts and perceptions create our own reality. And this is why it's so important to be intentional in our thinking. It's considered New Agey, but even the Apostle Paul taught this in Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue and if there be any praise, think on these things. Now, taking into account the world we live in, it's not enough to have faith alone. One also needs discernment to recognize evil from the wolves in sheep's clothing who gaslight us as their stock in trade, to recognize trends and the seasons and the times, that we might navigate our way through life's pitfalls and walk in peace. I grew up in a dysfunctional home, so for me, things are very black and white. These things are very clear. The whole biblical dichotomy of good versus evil is very much a part of my consciousness. But everyone can learn to recognize the red flags. And in 2019, red flags in California were popping up like wildfires. The writing was on the wall, and it spelled out an encroaching and most unwelcome communism. For all of our adult lives, my husband and I had followed President Reagan's directive that we should work hard and play by the rules. We had things and we wanted to keep them. It was time to get out of California while the getting was still good. It was one thing to leave, but we had no idea where we were going. In fact, we had no plans to go anywhere really, beyond a trip to Washington State to visit my husband's sister. What we did know was that we wanted to travel, and so we ended up buying a 22-foot travel trailer. We didn't know the first thing about living in a travel trailer. It's not what they make it out to be on YouTube. But in reading my book, you will learn everything you need to know about being a nomad. So on the one hand, we were propelling ourselves into a chaotic and uncertain future. And when you frame it that way, it sounds terrifying. But on the other hand, we were taking a leap of faith. And a leap of faith is a beautiful thing when you believe in a higher power. And when you put your trust in God, Source, the universe, whatever you choose to call that higher power. And I know that the Lord knows my heart. We don't know the future. We can't see the future. But the universe, that higher power, has a perfect plan for your life and the perfect place for you to be, all in perfect timing. If you take anything home with you from this talk today, let it be that God, the universe, Source, loves each and every one of you so much more than you could possibly imagine. And when you take that leap of faith, it's almost as if, not exactly, but almost like the universe says, do you, and I'll take care of the details. In my book, I talk quite a bit about politics from the standpoint of stewardship. Like, what kind of world do we want to live in? And the only reason why things have gotten as bad as they have is that somewhere along the line, we took our collective eye off the ball. We stopped paying attention. Or we were deceived by wolves in sheep's clothing. In my book, I talk quite a bit about psychology, as I understand it. I'm not a psychologist, nor do I pretend to be, but I have a grasp of human nature and what it means to be a traumatized person in a triggering world. In my book, I talk quite a bit about ordinary, mundane things, but it's in the mundane, day-to-day events that the miracles happen. I talk a lot about my relationship with my husband, Brent. He and I have been together for 30 years. Sure, we've had our ups and downs, like any couple, but today, our love is stronger than ever, and our partnership has blossomed. He and I are both musicians, and we met when we joined the same band. There was a time, not that long ago, when we couldn't even play music together because all we ever did was argue. But now, we play together great, and his drumming is awesome. He's so good that he makes me sound even better. Who knew that all we needed to get there was to take 2 whole years off of work, put together our own purpose-built home studio, so we could play together every night for hours, to a click track, at a volume reasonable enough that, for once, we could actually hear each other. Who knew? When we finally ended up in Bullhead City, we found the house of our dreams, and it cost less than half of what we sold our condo for. But as soon as we moved in and the dust settled, COVID hit, and the world went crazy. In low population density Mojave County, we were only slightly impacted by an abbreviated lockdown. But the friends we left behind in Cali were suffering. I only wish we could have taken them all with us when we left. In my book, I talk a lot about my perception of events. My informed skepticism versus those who bought into the narrative, lock, stock, and barrel. Information has come out slowly but surely that proves I wasn't wrong to be so skeptical. But there's no pleasure, not this time, and I told you so. In my book, I talk about authenticity, standing firm and resolute as an individual, apart from the herd, maintaining your own identity and not getting sucked into the hive mind. Your mind, your consciousness, is your pipeline to inspiration, the divine, the Holy Spirit. Use that amazing brain of yours to take the time to learn about yourself, to learn who you are and why you are the way you are. And this is how you learn where you fit in to the plan and make that incredible contribution to the world that only you can make. Don't let anyone gaslight you and filling your head with garbage and lies. Find your path, know your path, and stay on your path. And knowing your path and trusting in the universe, the Lord, whatever you choose to call it, when the time is right, you too can take that leap of faith. And that's how we escaped California and found our American dream. Thank you.